Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about the rule of thumb. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what is a good rule of thumb to remember when you're delivering software? And the short answer is that shit flows downstream, my friend. That's why. Or that's a very good rule of thumb. Let me explain. So what I mean by that is that you may have heard me use the term, or somebody else use the term, code monkey. So code monkey means that, well, for most people, means that you are a software developer who only focuses on your coding. The only thing you care about is you get a story, you work on that story, and then you pretty much just hack it together, or you just focus on that thing, whatever the requirements are, you make it work, and then you ship the feature. And that's great in the beginning of things, but one thing you should know is that it is always easier to change the specification of a story than it is to implement it in code. That's, I suppose, the real rule of thumb here. It's easier to change the specification than to change the code. And what that basically means is that if you are a code monkey, you will always work harder, or most likely you're always going to write shittier code than if you are a real experienced software developer who takes ownership of more than where you're actually involved within the soft skills area of a project delivery. Because when you have non-technical people, you might have project owners and designers and so forth. Like, you have to remember, they have almost no understanding of what's a complicated feature, what's a simple feature, what trade-offs are going to happen if they make different decisions. An example would be that if your designer comes to you with an artboard, you might face a project like just based on a little piece of information, something that they added in less than 2 seconds, because it looks nice on the interface, might delay the product delivery for you when it comes to implementation by several weeks. And if you are a code monkey, you will blindly just do that. You will not start asking questions and say, hey, you know what? That is actually a really complicated thing. Is there, could we make this work without that? Because that's going to save us a lot of time. Your PO, or like your project owner or the stakeholder, is most likely going to say, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds really reasonable. And then they will look at the designer, and maybe the designer is a reasonable person, and they go, yeah, actually, no, that's not super important. I'll just blop, and it's gone in 1 second. And all of a sudden you saved 2 weeks of development time just because of an arbitrary decision someone made ahead of time. And that's the thing about software delivery. Especially juniors, you will believe that the only thing that matters is how good you are at the typing and the coding and like just making logic work. And that is true in some cases. That does factor in. But as I said, the problem that you're really, the real problem isn't just, it's not possible to just solve that problem through coding alone, because the stakeholders and the requirements are the thing that dictates what the code is going to look like. And if you change those requirements, the problem becomes simpler, which means that the code becomes simpler. To make a really silly analogy, if someone comes in and says, hey, you know what, we're gonna need a search engine, and then they say, oh, it's gonna work very much like Google, or this Google search, and it's going to rival that, and you kind of go, well, that's going to take me several teams of people, probably an entire company of people, and I'm going to need several years of development time. And everybody goes, oh, no, shit, we can't do that. Is there no way to make it simpler? Well, we could make a regex search. And they go, what's that? Well, it's just a simple little, it's a one-liner pretty much, where I use the input to the search field and match it against the database. That's it. It should take less than a day. Oh, yeah, let's do that instead. And all of a sudden you saved a bunch of time. That would probably have been a really bad move if you were a consultant selling and trying to get a contract. But I hope you get where I'm going with this. So what I want you to take away from this is that the best rule of thumb that I know of, at least within software development, is that the shit flows downstream, or basically that you can't be a code monkey and be an effective software developer, not long term. You might be able to always solve the problem, but you will be able to reduce the complexity and the ugliness and solve so many problems within the code base if you're just a little bit aware of and involved in the pre-work and the requirement setting, asking the right questions and making sure that things that you highlight things that might be very complicated to build, so that you inform your stakeholders that these things here, if we kind of de-scope this or we change the requirements, it's actually going to save us a lot of time. That's going to reduce the legacy, it's going to reduce the development time, it's going to help the entire code base, because if the problem is complicated, the code is going to be complicated. If the problem is simple, the code is going to most likely remain at least simpler. And that's something that you can only solve by having a bit of social skills and soft skills and so forth. That's not something that you can code away. Have a great day.